Deep breaths, BSJ. Deep breaths. It's okay. It's not his fault. He's trying his best. Deep breaths.
Banana slam jam.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We got ourselves a 4400 MMR Jakiro replay. This is an interesting one because he says, I have a mid player who hates nothing more than playing support. I have no clue what to do when I'm not on my main role. The only real plan I have for support games is to push lanes and try not to feed. But it seems I'm not even doing that correctly. Everything else, from warding smokes, knowing parts of the map that I should be in by default, is pretty much random, and I would like to change that. Cool. This is a cool video because I think this is a problem a lot of people face, where either you have to rack up some role queue games, or you're not role queuing, and sometimes you're stuck supporting. And I think it's actually really good intentions from our friend Gabriel Jakiro here. I think it's super important that mid laners and other core players can actually play support. And this isn't something that I expect you to play support at a level obviously equivalent to that of support players. But the goal is to not be a griefing feeder and be entirely useless. You know, that's the goal we're trying to accomplish here. So this is something that will hopefully teach a lot of people a lot about supporting. So let's just make sure. I do have extra large map on. Dude, this new screen, this different screen is just so weird to me. Okay, so let's say you're against a Wind Ranger Tiny. I think your items are fine. I would have considered a salve because of the burst damage from Tiny for yourself and Spectre. So if you're not going to buy one now, I would highly recommend buying one soon. You know, maybe with the bounty room gold, chilling there. I've got some genuine intentions for this replay. You know, usually I've been going nuts. Usually I go crazy, but I'm actually pretty happy that I have a core player bringing me a support replay, because this is like the opposite of the mentality I feel like of most core players. So kudos to you. I'm now gonna fucking tell you how dog shit you are at supporting. So far, you've been doing pretty normal things. I'd say this is already better than most supports. You are kind of willy-nilly using your nukes. I think when you have this many tangos and you haven't really taken any damage from the Tiny, make him click you a little bit. Make him fight you first. I think I've talked about this on cores, but it applies to supports too. Why not make him hit you a couple times? Why are you wanting to stay at full health? Remember when I talked about that Lena session where I went ham on that guy for being full mana and not using his spells? You're full health and you're not using any of your health. Your health is a resource. What I would consider your Q to be is a trading ability. So trades include health. So if you're just going to stay at full health the entire time because you never let the guy hit you, because you dual breath him the second he walks anywhere close to you, that's the opposite side of that same problem. So, I'm going to go pull. Reasonable. Good shit here. Gotta work on your pulling last hits. Same thing there. He didn't really force you to use your nuke. I'd say you're just kind of willy-nilly chucking it out. Maybe as a mid laner, you're not really used to this concept of having to hold on to your nukes. But even this skill, I think, carries over to mid lane players. I think there's times where you don't necessarily get punished nearly as much because you're buying a bottle. But notice how this Tiny is just kind of full health anyway, and you're just sitting at no mana. And in the mid lane, it's just as important to use your nukes efficiently. It's just you're not going to have the mana problems necessarily. You'll see the problems manifest themselves kind of differently. But okay. So this case, like, that's a good example of what I would do for a dual breath. Hit him twice, he hits you back, then you dual breath him. That was better. Now you're going to go pull again. Okay. So you're doing a pretty good job with the pulls. That's not bad at all. Usually, from what I see, if people genuinely try, they'll be decent laning supports. This isn't the part of the game that's really that much different than playing core, even though people seem to make it out to be. Another example of probably a extra nuke you didn't really have to throw out there. If you look at Jakiro's abilities, his Q basically becomes twice as impactful when he's level 3 than when he's level 2. So just something to keep in mind there. I haven't seen you check your Spectre's items at all this entire lane. I have no idea what your Spectre has. I think in order to properly support people, you got to know what they got. So that's something to think about. Does he have a salve? Does he have regen? What is he going? Blade mail? Is he going boots and trying to be more aggressive? You have no idea what to expect from your Spectre. Expect from Spectre. That's a good one. I like that. There's a nice ring to it. Because you don't check his items. All the other stuff's been pretty decent, though. Okay. So this is about the part of the game, maybe 4 to 5 minutes. I'd say about 5 minutes. Where basically you need to start thinking about your other lanes. So I think this stems first from the question of, does my Spectre need me anymore? And there are times where they do, and that's absolutely important to recognize, and that's something you should be aware of every game 5 to 6 minutes in, because that's when the catapults start coming out. That's when people start usually hitting high enough levels that engagements can begin to occur, and that's when like a lot of pressure on the map starts racking up, and you need to be considering whether or not you're going to go to these things. So I see your perspective going down here. I'd say for Jakiro to be useful, you probably want to be level 3, just because this doubles in damage. And overall, I just want to communicate this as like a checkmark, benchmark for you. And it looks like you're doing a decent job of starting to look around. I'd say it's a bit late, largely about the fact that you haven't checked your Spectre's items at all. So you can't really make that gauge. Next to Kiro, that doesn't level a second point in their dual breath by level 3, is literally going to get slapped across the face harder than those people in that Reddit video that you guys all saw. Because I have actually mentioned specifically on Jakiro on like 4 or 5 different occasions that your Q goes up virtually no mana from leveling it from 1 to 2, and it doubles in damage. So now we're kind of in La La Land. No clear objective, seems like to you. Your Spectre's given up on top lane. I still don't know if we've seen her items. Okay, we've seen them now. You're going to rotate to the bottom lane. This is pretty reasonable. You have boots. I think this is the time where you start buying sentries. I think on support, it's really important that if you walk to a lane like this, that you know you're really unimpactful if they know you're there. And the way you die as a support is often information. So you talked about warding. You know, you said you have absolutely no clue what to do with warding. And when I'm going to start moving around the map, that's generally when I start giving myself sentries. Or if obviously the opponents made it really clear based on their actions or something they did that they saw me, that I'll deward my own lane. But like in this case, I would have probably placed a ward either here, like a D ward, a sentry, either here or like here, you know, just check for a lane ward. That's like a very standard thing to do, right? It's just something where I'm going to walk to bottom. Do they know I'm here? And these are very important things, because even if you end up leaving, you still confirmed to your team whether or not they had a ward there, and that'll be helpful in and of itself. One thing I emphasize to support players is the confidence that there isn't vision of you is just as important that you actually deward them. So let's just keep that in mind for ourselves when you're walking around as support. Just what ward could the opponent have that would see me? And that starts with buying yourself sentries, right? That's where it starts. So your Spectre going for the crazy haunt. It doesn't work out. Where are you going? You're cutting the creeps? This seems pretty nuts. Deep breaths, BSJ. Deep breaths. It's okay. It's not his fault. He's trying his best. Deep breaths. I know I made my Smurf videos initially for supports and stuff. All you have to do is push mid. That's really all you gotta do. You gotta clear waves whenever available and push mid. So whenever you're doing something on the map that isn't that, it's because somebody else is doing it. Okay? It's because somebody else is doing it. So, when it comes to like your timer as a support, when it comes to what you're doing as a support, anything else is free game if you are concerned with the lanes. So you just forced a Wind Ranger to TP bottom. What does that mean for you? I'm going to ask you. Ursa has no HP. Wind Ranger TP'd bottom. You now have freedom to go top because your Spectre's here and the Wind Ranger that is offlane that threatens you is no longer there. And Dire's middle tower is under attack. Okay. Better late than never. So what I'm trying to emphasize to you right now is that everything else that was done on the map just doesn't mean anything. It just means nothing. It means literally nothing. The second, as a support player and a core player, where you can confidently say this is not happening, is when you can start worrying about actual gank decisions and warding decisions and map control decisions. That is when you graduate from the Pee-wee leagues into the actual decision making. Now, BSJ, that was offensive. Why do you have to call him in the Pee-wee leagues? Maybe he's, just a core player. It doesn't matter, though, guys. That's the beauty of Dota. And what I tried to emphasize when I was playing support in the 1K bracket. I said it ahead of time. I said, you guys are going to flame me because in the 1K bracket, I am going to sit there farming waves. And I am going to be rich. And everyone's going to say, BSJ didn't actually support her there. As a support, it is your job to farm the waves that your cores are not farming. The beauty of the 1K bracket is nobody fucking farms waves. So, in the 1K bracket, I get to be a level 20 Crystal Maiden when my carry PA is level 16. If that alone doesn't tell you that farming lanes is more efficient than whatever the fuck they're doing, I don't know what does. I'm a level 20 CM when my PA is level 15 or 16. So what I see on Jakiro is 3 creep waves, maybe 2, that got missed, and you are level 3 at the 10-minute mark. That is what I see. Because as any role in Dota, you have to get the most levels and most farm to then be impactful at whatever you're doing. As a support, getting an early level 6, whatever, is just as important as farming efficiently on core heroes, guys. It is just as important. So I think for you to go bottom when you did was completely reasonable. Like, nothing was really going on the map. You couldn't really go top. Wind Ranger was there. You probably just feed. Yikes, don't really want to go there. But if you don't want to go somewhere, if you don't know what to do on the map, it's important that you ask yourself why you feel that way. Why can't I go top? Why am I not farming mid? And if it's like if your Storm's pushing mid, or your Silencer's taking mid, or your Underlord or Spectre's taking mid, then of course you're not supposed to go mid, right? And that's because you consciously understand as the 5 position that you are the bottom of the barrel. You are the bottom of the totem pole. You get last priority. But in the lower you are, even in 4K, did you not watch this? This is 4,400 MMR, guys. 4,400 MMR. I am watching 3 creep waves in the mid lane at 9 minutes into the game die to the tower. That is like 600 gold and 600 experience. Just dying to a tower. What's it take for you to level up right now? It takes 480? That's like more than a level, dude. That's crazy when you think about it. You could just be almost level 5 right now. And with the tome, you're 6. Right? So, these things seem so basic, guys. But I want to start giving you check marks. Because the beauty of it is, if you're a core player, such as yourself, that's trying to learn how to be capable of support, you just know it's the same responsibilities. But if you're playing SF, I think that was the first replay I did for you, that mid lane's yours if you want it. Like, if you want it, it's yours. As a Jakiro, it's not yours if you want it. It's yours if nobody else is taking it. That's the only difference, right? So, this would tell me that as a mid laner, you don't also prioritize mid lane. That's what it would tell me. And what I've been emphasizing this whole time. People may say, BSJ is getting a little repetitive. I don't care if it's repetitive. If you guys aren't doing it, I'm going to keep flaming it. So whatever you just did in the last minute and a half is just worthless because this is happening. However, before that, I talked about, okay, it's kind of reasonable, nothing clear for you to do right now. You walked bottom. But with that in mind, you have to know that you would rather be getting levels. As a support, as a mid laner, wouldn't you rather be farming? Like, that's what you'd rather be doing. So if you don't have a place to farm, if there's no clear place to go, then walk to the naturally either the most offensive or aggressive parts of the map, like if you're trying to defend a tower or push a tower, kind of like you did, and then look for opportunities to farm. That's all it is. And it's usually waves, right? And if you force reactions like you did with this Wind Ranger, that's a perfect example of being able to make use of that. So, like, in this game, if Spectre had not gone top, like she came bottom, if she had not gone back top, then you would ideally take this lane. But since she took top, obviously you're not going to take it, right? So, we've now gone on an entire lecture, but it is a little bit different here. Gonna get some levels. Okay. Push out the mid lane. You see what's going on. Your Spectre's dying randomly by herself. Nothing you can do about that. Let's just chill. Nothing to say about that one. Get our tome. We're level 6. You did put a second point. Your Storm's still farming. You're going to stack for your Storm. This is all reasonable. Notice how there's no real clear lane for you to go to right now. This looks pretty natural to me. Nothing's being forced. Storm's farming around mid, so we're going to head towards bottom. Okay. Can work with this. Okay. This is a situation where another option that was worth considering is you walked here. This makes sense, right? This makes sense as the place that you would naturally go to get something done. That's kind of what we know about the map. So this is how you start learning. I saw that you pushed 3 waves, or 2 waves, whatever, and then one of your mid laners took it, and then now you had no clear place to go. So the last minute and a half or so has been reasonable to me. Everything you've done makes sense. So this is a decision where you have 2 options. You know you're supposed to make plays bottom. Your choices are to walk bottom and be a part of it and maybe be able to TP mid or top, or to walk top and maybe join your team bottom if something happens. And I need you to know both of those are options. I would argue it might be better for you to have gone top here and then be ready to go bottom. The only thing you could really do wrong there is to TP top. That's like the bad thing. Because if you TP top, then you're removing yourself from the game as a support, right? So in this example, I'm not necessarily telling you which one's better. I want you to know that that is an option. So if you find yourself in these situations, which you need to start recognizing based on the heroes in the game, all that kind of stuff, where you walk to this lane, you know it's the place you're supposed to do things, and then just nothing happens for like a minute, that maybe it was better for you to have walked somewhere else and be ready to TP here. I just want you to know that's an option, my man. So it looks like it was a reasonable choice for you to go bottom. A little bit out of position, I'd say. I'm not going to worry too much about that. You being in front is not ideal. Your Spectre's top right now. You guys, okay. I don't think this play was terrible. I'm honestly not going to flame it or anything. You TP mid, you pushed it out. Okay. I would say your movement was a bit forced bottom. just a tad. They're really strong mid game. They have Ursa, they have Wind Ranger, Tiny. I would argue that you guys could be in kind of like force reactions and back off mode. And if I'm ever in that mode, I generally try not to group up with like 3 or 4 heroes, because then you're dedicating 3 or 4 heroes to force a rotation, which can usually be done with 1 or 2. So now there's this fight going on top, and you're prioritizing mid lane. I honestly don't mind this, but you're gonna help the team chase the Wind Ranger. This has all been reasonable to me, honestly. This is actually all reasonable to me. I think if you are going to clear waves, that I would not be maxing Ice Path. I probably would have maxed Dual Breath this game. But I can understand that you want to be like a follow-up stun maybe to your Storm. This is a scenario where you're sitting at half mana, and you have a Clarity and a Void Stone, but you don't have infinite mana. And to be honest with you, you just don't need to nuke this wave. You just don't have to. And I need you... It was kind of similar to the laning phase, but I need you to start realizing that the reason why you're nuking is because you either have to, or you're trying to force reactions. And it's like speeding up the process. But when the lane's underneath the tower, that's just not the case. Right? No, the only time you really nuke the wave when it's underneath your tower is when the opponent's pushing it. So you need to nuke the wave as quickly as possible such that the opponent can't push your tower. So here, there's no pressure on your tower. It just creeps underneath the tower. You don't have full mana. It's not like you TP from base. You're just using 150 mana. So just very inefficient use of mana. That applies to any role, right? But you can learn it as support because you get punished a bit more for it because you don't have as many items. I'd like to make a public service announcement that your mid lane is taking damage. Guess what happens when you don't go mid? Your Storm TP'd from bottom to mid. I would argue that right after you picked up that bounty rune, you could have walked mid and then TP'd bottom. I just want you to understand that if you want to be a part of these fights and you're not first pushing the waves, it creates this super awkward and forced dynamic. So a lot of times in these plays you're making, I think the places you're going are reasonable, but you're not pushing the waves first. So you put yourself in this awkward scenario where one of your cores now has to go do it. And then now you're pushing a tower without your core. So it's like, now what? So what I would argue about here is that you are pushing a tower with absolutely no information. So you're walking to the bottom half of the map here, and look at your map, right? There's just nothing. Wards are free, my man. I don't know if somebody's buying them all or what. But wards are absolutely free. And if you, which you seem to have correctly identified, like, you know, I talk about this a lot, that this bottom tower is where you're supposed to push, which is correct. And it's pretty much always that way. Then you need to see shit when you're going for objectives. That's just how it is. So you need to know they don't see you as best as possible, and you need to know you see them. So it seems like you're kind of wandering to the right place on the map, but it doesn't seem to matter to you that you see things there, which it obviously should. So I want you to change that mindset real quick and be like, let's not blindly push this tower and have a Lich walk out at nighttime into 3 of us without us having seen him until he ults. Right? This was just an informationally incorrect play. If you saw that Lich coming, you're going to Ice Path him from out of fog, and he's going to eat the, you know, the root plus nuke from Underlord. And it's like, if the fight then doesn't work, okay. Like, if you still lose the fight, it's like, okay, we had all the information necessary, and we still fed. It's kind of an example where instead of pushing the lanes first, you kind of just did something. I also need to see people. I need to know what they're doing. And if I then make the wrong decision anyway, that's, you know, that's on me. Okay. It's crazy how even if you don't do things properly, usually if you go to the right part of the map, it'll eventually work itself out. Luckily, the silencer, I believe, warded for you there. So you're going to go mid. This is a case where, you know, if Underlord wants to follow you there, I honestly think he should be pushing bottom. But it's an option for you to just go bottom here. I say mid's important, right? But your Underlord's taking it over. And I need you to understand that mid lane is mostly... It's like half and half. It's half aggressive, half defensive. And so when you have a hero like Spectre, it's usually defensive because you're the team that doesn't feel pressured to take objectives. So the reason why you're pushing out mid is such that the opponent can't push it, but it's also because you're like trying to get farm. So Underlord's a very defensive push hero, right? Notice how it's kind of funny that you're actually higher level than your Underlord. I think right now you're kind of griefing him. Because earlier I told you at 9 minutes it's your job to push the mid when nobody else is doing it. But Underlord's a hero that loves doing this. He loves doing this. So it's not only important that you understand that this is important, but as a mid laner, this applies too. Because if you're a hero as mid that's capable of farming multiple different places on the map, if you continue farming mid when you have an off laner that loves sitting mid farming it, you're kind of griefing him, right? You're kind of just like taking the farm that he would like to have. And it's even more important as a support because you're lower on the totem pole than the Underlord. It's like, as a mid laner, if I know I have an Underlord that's likely to farm this, but I have nowhere else to go, I'm still going to farm it. Like, that's just kind of how it goes. I'm going to still farm it. The Underlord has to just suck it up or whatever. But in your case, I would be either bottom, top, or sitting behind the Underlord. I would not be taking his farm. Okay? So it's like, I'm either pushing another wave because he's taking it, or if there's no waves to push, then I need to recognize the mid lane is the most important lane, and I need to sit there helping the guy. And also, if I know that we've taken bottom tower, it's likely our objective is going to be mid tower next, and since they've taken top tower, our mid tower is their objective. These are things I've talked about all the time, which you should also be aware of as a core player. Guess where we're supposed to ward? Guess where we're supposed to have vision control? Mid lane. Wee, yeah. That's all it really is, right? Is I talk about the order of objectives for carry players and core players to like be farming around and stuff. As supports, it's the same shit. It's just warding, right? And anytime your teammates don't do it, you do it for them. And somebody in chat argued that you're really close to your Yules. Well, I would argue that you could also just be farming at bottom if your Underlord insists on coming mid. So it's like, here's my thought process, right? You were bottom. You walked towards mid. I want you to realize when you take that tower that there's always going to be one hero pushing the bottom wave, and there should always be one hero defaulting to pushing out the mid wave as well. One hero pressures bottom tower gently or hard, depends on the game, and the other hero pushes mid. So right now, I'd be seeing my Underlord do this, and I probably would have walked back towards bottom right now. Like, I would have seen this. I'd be like, oh, my Underlord wants mid? Okay. And I'd go back and be here. That's what I would have done. It would have been about right here. But it comes with the realization that every time we take this tower, one person's probably going to be pushing here if possible, and one person's going to be pushing here. That's something that almost always needs to be done. Storm Spirit, I would look at him and say, oh, he's not pushing it. It's like if Storm was this close, or like if Storm was full health, full mana, I'd probably leave bottom lane to him. And it's like if Underlord had no mana, I'd make sure I took mid, right? But in this case, I see an Underlord full health, full mana that's walking towards mid, and I see this. So I'm like, oh, bottom lane's mine. If both of those lanes are getting taken, that's when I may sit behind the Underlord farming the small camp for my Yules, for instance, right? These are all things where it's understanding. It's a little bit more of an advanced decision, but overall, your decisions right now have been fine. Like your decision to go bottom, your decision now to walk mid. These are all realistic decisions, but now it's going to take more than just knowing mid lane's supposed to be pushed. Earlier, when mid wasn't getting pushed, all I can tell you is, holy shit, man, you're supposed to push mid. Right now, you are doing it, but we're dedicating the resources incorrectly. Okay. Okay, so you do make your way back bottom. Spectre's much more of a dead lane farming carry than a bottom farming carry also, because she can be anywhere on the map at any time. So that usually is the reason you don't go bottom. That's a ward you never place unless you have a sentry. That's just way too aggressive. These hill wards that have control of an area you don't see, anytime you're going to ward like a very standard ward location that you can't see beforehand, meaning like I don't have any previous vision in that area, you definitely sentry it first. So this would definitely be where I'm bottom, man. I told you mid's important. I would love to be pushing bottom right now, and the minute I see that shit happening, I TP in. Remember I talked about how you could be walking top earlier and then TPing bottom to your team? You are correctly identifying what parts of the map something is supposed to happen, okay? That is what I am seeing. You have consistently put yourself on the part of the map where something is going to happen. And I need you to realize as support, you need to be able to be there. You don't have to sit there. So what I'm seeing is inefficiency on the map simply because you choose to sit behind the area when there's stuff like this going on, right? So that's the difference. That's the next step for you. I think so far I've actually seen pretty good signs of you having decent fundamentals as a support player. This is just efficiency shit at this point, which is fine. As a 4K player, you can definitely work on this stuff. Little bit of aggressive positioning from you there. That's pretty nuts in my opinion, but that's kind of on you to have self-awareness that that's fucking nuts. The cloak is definitely a reasonable item. You're checking your teammates' items. In this case, there's no clear place to be right now, so I'd definitely walk out of base. You did a good job here. You're going to walk towards top to push it out, it looks like. Your Spectre TPs, so you no longer go there. Completely reasonable decisions from me when you respawn. Your positioning here is nuts to me again. Don't really know what you're doing. You're just like, hey guys, I'm here, guys. Hey, I'm here. Push mid. So the fact that you're pushing mid is reasonable, but the way you're going about it is like, I'm the king of the world. They can't do anything to me. Nice canceled TP. I mean, you're just nuts. I don't have anything else to say about that, dude. Jurgen's Wind Ranger, Tiny, Ursa, OD, all these heroes kill you, man. You're just walking on their side of the river. There's really nothing else to say about that. That's like, you're just courageous as fuck, and not in a good way. So, unnecessary feed there, and since you were doing a large part of the defending mid, you lose your mid tower for it. Okay, so they end up throwing a Roche, I guess. Items are fine. I probably would have bought another windlace. Oh, this is just another scenario where you're kind of just walking into the enemy jungle with absolutely no vision, and you have vision that they're not anywhere else. Like, you see Wind Ranger, that's it. Like, you see literally one hero here. Everyone's alive, and there's just nobody else. So this is just map awareness shit, my man. Process of elimination. There was one hero here, and nobody else showed on the map. Guess where they all are? Oh, dear. They are all in the place we can't see, and we just walk in there with no wards. So as a support, not only are you going to learn the value of warding the places you want to play around, but you're going to realize once you've warded that you play around the fucking wards, because that's what they do for you. So if you're going to push out mid, guess where you're going to go? Guess where you're going to casually walk towards? The ward you have. And why would you not go to the ward you have? Because the ward is supplying you with information that allows you to go to places that you don't have warded. We're going to let that sink in for a second, guys. We're going to let that sink in for everyone, because this is a universal concept that applies to all roles. Play towards your wards. If you don't have any wards and you don't feel safe going anywhere, that's where you consider smoking, because, you know, at that point you're scared to walk through wards and you need to get out on the map. But wards, either you play towards them or they tell you that you can go somewhere else. You did not go towards your wards, and they did not tell you you could go somewhere else. And we just kind of walk into three heroes randomly. That's going to happen an awful lot. by the way. An awful lot. We're going to about wrap up this replay here. I'd say usually with support replays, I focus purely on the first 25 to 30 minutes of the game. It's going to get a bit awkward now that we've fed randomly. Okay. So your team seems to be inclined to rinse and repeat the same mistake. These type of things I would recognize are equally bad as they were the first time, meaning for the same reasons they were bad the first time or the same reasons they're bad now. Your team just randomly ran into the opponent jungle. You have absolutely no vision of anyone else on the enemy team on their side of the map, so you know they're almost all certainly there. At least it's possible for them to all be in their own jungle, and there's 2 waves that could be pushed. And as a support, you will never be able to stop your team from doing what they just did. Let me repeat that to you guys. Why would you concern yourself? BSJ, I have feeding cores that run into their jungle with no vision at all times. What do you want to do about it? You want me to coach you on how to make them not do that? It's literally not fucking possible. It's literally not fucking possible for you to do anything. But we know why it's bad. And we know when the opponent does it, what they could do to capitalize on it, which is to take objectives. And so your job as a support, as any role in the game, when you see your team doing dumb shit, is to prevent the opponent from being able to capitalize on it. Thus, I would have nuked mid and walked towards top and nuked that out. That's exactly what I would have done. Because guess what? Even though your team takes a dumbass fight and maybe these dumbass fights rack up enough to lose you the game, the opponent will get no objectives. And most notably, that is all you can do. That is the only thing you can do. And we're going to wrap up this replay right there. Hope you learned something.